Chapter 1. Miss Justice, your dog has been kidnapped. Edward, wand in hand, stared blankly at the suddenly appearing large garden before him, his mind reeling with shock. The last time I was this shocked was 3 years ago when I inexplicably traveled to the Harry Potter world and became a first-year student at Hogwarts. As one of those who boarded this train of time travel, Edward's luck was mixed. He was unlucky because he didn't have the system he was looking for, but fortunately his body had pretty good talent, and he had mastered most of the spells by the time he was in his 3rd year. However, he was already 16 years old this year, compared to other Hogwarts students who normally enter at 11. Edward entered Hogwarts at 14. So sometimes I wonder if this so-called good talent is just a normal occurrence due to being 3 years older. As for why he only entered school at the age of 14, he had no idea. He had no memories of the time before this body transmigrated. For this reason, he specifically borrowed the pensieve from Dumbledore. But unfortunately, he could only see the memories after he arrived in this world. Edward shook his head, returning to reality. I just like usual, pushed open the door to the room of requirement and went inside. Even though the room of requirement can transform into a place of all kinds of wishes, it still has to be a room, right? What's with this big garden? A thought struck him. Could it be that someone secretly replaced the key to the room of requirement? Thinking of this, Edward immediately waved his wand, casting a disillusionment charm and an armor charm on himself, remaining extremely vigilant and quickly searching his surroundings. Before him lay a magnificent garden, its vibrant flowers swaying gently in the breeze under the sunlight. The trees and vines on the walls were neatly trimmed, clearly indicating regular maintenance. In the shady corner of the garden, there was a small hanging chair with a blue lady's lace hat casually placed on it, probably left there by its owner by accident. Not far away stood a luxurious European-style villa, resembling a small castle, which spoke volumes about the wealth of its owner. Edward frowned slightly. Could this be the Malfoy or some pure-blood family's manor? The air here is really awful. He cautiously approached the villa, and when he was only a dozen meters away from the villa's gate, a girl dressed as a maid hurried over from the side, and he quickly followed. The maid walked into the lavishly decorated villa and came to the door of a bedroom. She gently knocked on the door and said, "Miss, the ball is about to start. It's time to change your clothes." There was no response from inside the room. The maid sighed. "I'll have them bring the dress over first." The maid turned to leave, but Edward appeared out of thin air, his wand shooting out a beam of light. "Petrify them all." The maid's body quickly stiffened and turned to stone, her eyes wide with terror as she froze in place. Edward strode forward, meeting the maid's eyes. "Flagellamens." Woof! Woof! A huge golden dog pounced out of the shadows. Edward instinctively flung himself away, knocking the dog unconscious. The golden dog howled and was sent flying. At this moment, a large amount of information from legitimacy flooded into his mind. The maid's memories were simple: taking care of her mistress, directing other maids to work, eating, sleeping, and taking care of her mistress. Is there no useful information? The moment this thought arose, a series of familiar yet unfamiliar images suddenly surfaced in his mind. Red Moon, Church of the Night, Audrey Hall, Backland, Earl Hall. Edward's face turned deathly pale. Audrey, Backland, Red Moon. Red Moon. This is the world of the Lord of Mysteries. The more you know, the more dangerous it is. The more you know, the easier it is to be corrupted. The more you know, the faster you will die. He had read the entire book, Lord of Mysteries, before. Wait a minute. If this is the Lord of Mysteries, then the maid was speaking in rune, so why was I able to understand her? Suddenly, his brain started throbbing wildly, as if it were about to explode, as if something extremely dangerous and terrifying was about to happen. But the next second, Edward felt a burning sensation on the back of his hand, and several blurry lines appeared. Then a cool sensation poured down from the top of his head. The intense sense of crisis he had just felt disappeared. He was taken aback, but before he could think any further, he suddenly raised his wand to himself, gritted his teeth, and hissed, "Obliviate!" Bang! Edward flew 2 meters backward and crashed to the ground. A moment later, he sat up, clutching his forehead and looking pained. Can anyone tell me why the Oblivion Curse can send someone flying 2 meters away? Edward picked up his wand that had fallen to the side and staggered to his feet. That was insane. I actually used the forgetfulness charm on myself. Luckily, the forgetfulness charm can selectively erase memories, so I just forgot. Chapter 2. Miss Justice has been kidnapped too. Edward finally managed to pull his leg out, only to see a large group of people swarming towards him. Leading them was Earl Hall, whose figure and skin had changed with age, his azure eyes filled with vigilance. "Who are you?" Edward ignored him completely, and once again used the disillusionment charm to conceal his presence. Earl Hall's expression darkened, and he immediately addressed his eldest son, Hilbert Hall, behind him. "Hilbert." Hilbert nodded, took a few steps back, and disappeared into the crowd. Surrounded by his servants, Earl Hall regained his composure. "Friend, just tell me what you need, and I can promise you can leave safely with your things." Edward, now invisible, was caught in a dilemma. He knew that Hilbert Hall must have gone to find an extraordinary, and if he tried to escape now, he might just run into one of the Hall's extraordinary. It seems there's only one way left. He strode to Audrey's room door and waved his wand. The Araho cave opens. The tightly closed door slammed open, and Edward appeared. Before Earl Hall could react, Edward pushed the door open, rushed inside, and then slammed it shut again. What comes into view is a luxurious bedroom with gorgeous wallpaper, a luxurious bed, an ornate dressing table and chairs, and various expensive oil paintings as decorations. To be honest, this does not look like the bedroom of a 17-year-old girl. With a creak, the bathroom door was pushed open, and a girl in a long dress walked out. Her long golden hair, like satin, was draped over her shoulders, and her emerald green eyes were crystal clear, as deep as the sea and as pure as the purest gemstone. Her temperament was pure and elegant. It must be said that she was the most beautiful girl Edward II had ever seen. Audrey had just finished the summoning ritual assigned by Mr. Fool. Hearing the commotion outside, she hurriedly packed up her belongings and left the bathroom. Then he saw a boy dressed in a strange black robe, unlike Rune's usual style. He looked about his age, a head taller than him, less than 1.8 meters, with short, flaxen hair that made him look quite energetic. He was fairly handsome, but nowhere near as good-looking as the princes of the royal family. He seemed somewhat tense, his fingers gripping the strange stick tightly, clearly concerned about it. His right trouser leg was heavily wrinkled and had several small holes. Judging from the sounds outside, he is clearly an extraordinary being. Considering his current reactions, he doesn't seem like a burglar. "Miss Audrey, I have no intention of offending you, nor do I wish to do anything to harm you." Edward said the words almost subconsciously, in fairly standard Rune language. Sure enough, I could not only understand it but also speak it. This must be some kind of cheat code I got from traversing this mysterious world. I wonder if I also mastered the Giant's language and Hermes' language, which contain mysterious powers. After a brief moment of confusion, Edward continued, "I just accidentally wandered into your villa and had some misunderstandings with your family. I only broke into your room to protect myself." A flicker of fear crossed Audrey's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by intense curiosity. "Are you an extraordinary?" "Logan of who?" Edward gestured to her first, then waved his wand. "Hudiha." After casting a whisper spell, Edward said, "I suppose so, but it's not quite the same as for extraordinary beings like you." Audrey immediately asked instinctively, "How did you know I Before she could finish speaking, she quickly covered her mouth, but her sparkling blue eyes still revealed her surprise. If it were a different time and place, Edward might have teased her. Before advancing to Sequence 4, Audrey was always an innocent and curious girl. But after experiencing war, death, and a series of other events, she grew up and became a qualified superhuman, a true spectator. However, Edward had no time to think about these things at the moment. He entered Audrey's room to avoid harming her, but who knew what kind of extraordinary being would arrive later? Even if he took her hostage, he might be forcibly dragged into a dream and killed without her noticing. Left out in the cold, Audrey couldn't help but speak again. "Mr. Robber." "I'm not a robber," Edward interrupted, rubbing his forehead. "Don't you know that using that term is provocative and could provoke someone's anger?" "Well, Mr. Extraordinary, one who stumbled in, actually. I can ask my father to let you leave safely." "You believe what I say so easily." Before he could finish speaking, he remembered that Audrey had already taken the potion and become an audience member. Judging from her words and actions, it wouldn't be difficult for her to tell whether what he said was true or false. No wonder people always say to be careful of the audience. It's very difficult for an ordinary person to lie in front of an audience. Edward believed Audrey was sincere. But how could Earl Hall let an extraordinary person who had inexplicably entered his home leave unscathed? Since that's the case, he took 2 steps toward Audrey, then stopped abruptly and held out his hand. "Could I have a strand of your hair?" Audrey hesitated. She believed in what she had just observed, but hair was still of great significance in the mystical world. However, she quickly became dejected. It seemed she had no choice. She carefully curled a strand of long golden hair with her index finger, then gently pulled it out. Hair flew in. With a summoning spell, the golden hair flew into his hand. He then immediately pulled a palm-sized water bottle from the leather pouch at his waist. Yes, this unassuming pouch had been enchanted with a seamless stretching spell, revealing a space of over 20 cubic meters inside. Audrey watched Edward's actions with curiosity. Although she had become an extraordinary being after drinking the potion, the lower sequence audience did not possess any obvious extraordinary abilities. She was quite envious of the ability to make things fly with just a word. Edward stuffed his long blonde hair into the kettle, shook it gently, and then looked at Audrey and said, "Okay, take off your clothes." Audrey's eyes widened instantly. What happened to the promise of accidentally wandering in? What happened to the promise of no intention to offend? What happened to the promise of not being a bad person? Edward's transfiguration skills were actually quite good. He had long mastered its derivative spell, Quick Change, but he didn't know how long he needed to disguise himself, and the duration of transfiguration was limited. Seeing Audrey back away in terror, Edward frowned and said, "What are you thinking?" "I just want to borrow the clothes you're wearing. Go to the bathroom and change them off for me." After a brief moment of confusion, Audrey felt the timing was wrong, but she couldn't help but puff out her cheeks. She took another dress from the closet, went into the bathroom, and slammed the door shut. But she immediately realized, Audrey, you're being kidnapped. He may not be a bad person, but you can't throw a tantrum." Listening to the rustling sounds of changing clothes in the bathroom, Edward dared not let his guard down for a moment. Perhaps in the original story, Miss Justice was indeed kind, righteous, and naive. But now, in this real world, human nature is the most untrustworthy thing. Edward suddenly felt his eyes getting sleepy and couldn't help but yawn. "Strange. I went to bed early last night, so why—" A sudden, throbbing sensation ran through his heart. Could it be a Sequence 7 nightmare pulling me into a dream? Perhaps the reason it didn't succeed on the first try is because the brain-blocking technique is preventing the other party from entering the dream? However, it's uncertain how long this obstacle will last. Recover quickly. Edward quickly cast a resurrection spell on himself, then rushed to the bathroom door and pounded on it. "Are you done changing? Hurry up." All right. Audrey opened the door, already dressed in the new blue dress she had brought. Perhaps because she was in a hurry, her long blonde hair looked messy. quite a contrast to her previous ladylike image. She handed Edward the clothes she had just changed out of. "What do you want my clothes for?" "Put it on." Edward didn't bother to hide it anymore. In front of her, he quickly took off his Hogwarts robes, revealing the inner lining. Then he picked up the clothes that were still slightly warm from his body and hurriedly put them on. He also took a sip of polyjuice potion in between. This series of actions clearly piqued Audrey's curiosity again. She hesitated for a while, but finally couldn't help asking, "Are you changing your clothes to impersonate me? But you look completely different from me. Even our body types are very different." As soon as he finished speaking, Edward's skin began to ripple as if boiling. His flaxen hair grew rapidly, turning golden, and his brown pupils turned emerald green. His body seemed to be compressed, and he slowly shrank until he was the same size as Audrey, and looked exactly the same. Audrey forgot all about being ladylike. She rubbed her eyes vigorously to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Although she already knew about the wonders of the mystical world, this transformation still shocked her greatly, especially since it was in her own likeness. Edward quickly pulled out his inner lining and straightened his clothes. Although they still looked a bit messy, they were more in line with the state one would expect after being kidnapped by bandits. He then untied the leather pouch at his waist, loosened the rubber cord binding it, and pulled it down to a size large enough for an adult to crawl into before placing it on the floor. "Go inside quickly." Audrey was quite clever this time. Her emerald eyes flashed again. "This bag has a lot of space inside, doesn't it? Is that another of your extraordinary abilities?" She strolled closer and peered inside. She saw a faint light emanating from the leather bag, and a small wooden ladder rested at the opening, leading to an unknown space. Edward gave her a push. "Hurry up. I'll get you one later if you like it." She immediately lifted her skirt with both hands and climbed down the wooden ladder. Even when only her head was visible, she looked at Edward and said, "It's a promise. Don't forget. Miss Justice, aren't you being a bit too carefree?" Edward pushed her inside. "Phew, I'm so sorry, Miss Justice." Oh, thunderous explosion. A strong blue light slammed into the outer wall of the bedroom. The next second, intense heat and impact erupted, instantly shattering the walls and collapsing the roof. A luxurious bedroom that a commoner in Rune could never afford in several lifetimes was reduced to ruins. Amidst the billowing dust, Edward stuffed his wand into his leather pouch, then tied the pouch tightly to his skin at the very back before lying down on the ground, pretending to faint. Chapter 3. Welcome to Hogwarts. Two figures rushed into the dusty house. They were dressed in the uniforms of the Church of the Night and wore red gloves. Red gloves is a nickname for the elite team within the Church of the Night Watch. Generally, the minimum requirement for joining is Sequence 7, and they are the elites rigorously selected by the Church of the Night. Earl Hall, a renowned banker in Rune and a devout follower of the Church of the Night, perhaps due to the haste, sent 2 red gloves with only Sequence 7. The two quickly determined the situation, and one of them said, "The bandits have already escaped. But I was watching outside the whole time, and I didn't see anyone. They must have escaped during the explosion." Count Hall was no longer as composed as he usually was. "I don't care about those damn bandits. I just want to know how my daughter is doing." "He just fainted." Earl Hall hurriedly picked up Audrey Edward and ran outside shouting, "Hibbert, get the doctor here quickly." The 2 red gloves remained where they were, in an attempt to find traces of the bandits. A gust of wind blew in, dispersing the smoke and dust that filled the room. An old man with silver eyes and silver hair, wearing a black soft hat, descended from the sky. He was dressed in a black robe embroidered with storm symbols, and had a serious expression on his face. It was none other than the Storm Pigeon, the singer of God, a snake who was always there, but always late. His silver eyes quickly scanned his surroundings before he stirred up another gust of wind and flew away into the distance. The 2 red-gloved men exchanged a glance and said helplessly, "Let's go back to the church first. We'll leave the investigation to this singer of God." In another room of Earl Hall's luxurious villa, Edward lay quietly on the bed, surrounded by Earl Hall, Hilbert, and others. A bespectacled, neatly dressed doctor stood up and reassured the crowd. "Your Excellency, Miss Audrey has simply fainted from fright. She's all right." Before Earl Hall could speak, Hilbert Hall asked urgently, "Are you sure? Such a huge explosion just from being startled." "I just had the nurses check her over, and Miss Audrey has no injuries whatsoever. There shouldn't be any mistake." Count Hall breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good." He then looked at Hilbert Hall and asked, "Have the Church of the Night and the Church of the Storm responded regarding that bandit?" "Not yet. I'll go and follow up again." Earl Hall, unusually furious, declared, "Whoever it is, I will not let him get away with this." Just then, accompanied by sobs, the Countess entered, supported by her maid. "Oh, my daughter!" Earl Hall sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Didn't I tell you not to tell your mother yet? But something this big can't be kept secret, and Audrey is fine anyway." The Countess walked to the bedside to take Edward's hand, but Earl Hall quickly put his arm around her shoulder and pushed her away, saying, "It's all right. Audrey is fine. What she needs now is to rest." As the door was gently closed, everyone in the room left. Edward finally dared to relax a little. He had gotten through this ordeal, but how was he going to escape now? There must still be people from the Church of the Night keeping watch around, not to mention the storm pigeons who could kill him at any moment. If he stays, he'll be exposed soon enough. After all, it's too difficult for a modern man like him to play the role of a noble lady who has to pretend to faint when she's embarrassed. Besides, there's not enough compound decoction to drink. Edward sighed, at a loss for what to do when he suddenly felt someone watching him. Startled, he quickly looked over. In the shadows, Susie, the golden retriever, lay on the ground, her face clearly showing complex emotions such as human-like struggle, hesitation, worry, and fear. The man and the dog stared at each other for a moment. Susie finally spoke first. You're not Audrey, are you?" She emerged slowly from the shadows, her tail drooping. "How is she? Is she safe? Can you let her go?" Edward sat up quickly, staring warily at Susie. He didn't have his wand with him right now, and if they really fought, who knew who would have the upper hand? Susie moved closer, lowered her head slightly to avoid eye contact, and spoke again, her voice echoing through the air. "Is she still alive?" Go. She. Just as Edward was about to reply, everything around him suddenly faded, turning into a gray and empty void, as if time and space had frozen at that moment. The next second, a strong sense of falling came over him, and everything in his vision became blurred due to the high-speed fall. At the same time, he heard sharp and piercing murmurs in his ears, like the sound of fingernails scraping across a blackboard, or like silver needles piercing into his fingernails and stirring wildly. Edward felt as if his head had been stuffed with all sorts of random things in an instant, as if it were about to explode at any moment. His skin began to boil, his whole body turned red, but his heart beat slower and slower. Nausea, dizziness, pain, suffering. Just as all the sensations were about to reach their peak, they suddenly vanished, as if it had all been an illusion. Edward knelt on the ground, his hands supporting him, as if he had been drowning for a long time and had finally been rescued. He was breathing heavily, and the colors that had faded around him began to reappear, turning from nothingness into reality. The huge, dimly lit space, the haphazardly stacked old bookshelves and tables and chairs, the dilapidated flying brooms, and so on, all indicate that this is indeed the room of requirement. "I'm back?" After a brief moment of astonishment came endless joy. Compared to the world of the Lord of Mysteries, which is full of madness, pollution, and extreme danger, he naturally prefers this place. Although Voldemort is also a troublemaker here, it is generally safe. Moreover, the various magics he has mastered make him feel even safer. Unlike in Lord of Mysteries, where the stun curse couldn't even take down a dog. A burning sensation came from the back of my left hand again. Still resembling Audrey, he now had a square mark emitting an orange-red glow on the back of his fair, jade-like hand. The light lasted for more than 10 seconds before gradually fading, leaving only a faint square tattoo, like a door outlined with lines. This is. Before he could think it through, a stream of information suddenly flooded his mind. This square mark was the key to his journey to the world of the Lord of Mysteries. After its initial activation, he would travel between the world of mysteries and the world of Harry Potter every 15 days. 15 days in Lord of Mysteries, 15 days in Harry Potter. But whether he leaves or stays in the Harry Potter world, time will continue to pass normally here. When he travels to the Lord of Mysteries, he will return to the point in time when he left. This is such a strange time setting. In terms of the strength of the extraordinary beings, the level rank of the mysterious world is obviously higher than that of Harry Potter. So why is the former's time frozen while the latter's time flows normally? Freezing a higher level world should be more difficult, right? However, does freezing the world of the Lord of Mysteries mean that we no longer need to worry about certain mysterious forces and consciousnesses, such as the primal ones, having no chance to sneak over along with us? Wait, forced time travel? Doesn't that mean he'll never be able to escape the dangerous world of the Lord of Mysteries? He glanced at the clock on the wall, 5 p.m. Does this mean that at 5 p.m., 15 days from now, I will be transported to the mysterious world again? Those deleted memories can't be restored for now. Otherwise, I'd have to cast a forgetting spell on myself every time I go back, and I'm afraid I'd end up like Bertha Jorkins. But facing this mysterious world with fragmented memories, who knows what pitfalls I might stumble into and die for no reason. No, I still need to find some time to restore them once, and write down some precautions in a little notebook, just in case. Just as he was thinking this, Edward's gaze began to slowly rise, and the well-fitting dress gradually became narrower, eventually tearing as his body grew taller and stronger. The duration of the compound decoction has expired. The leather pouch that had been hidden close to his body slipped off and fell to the ground. Oh, right. Audrey's still in the leather bag. Could she have come with me, too? He quickly opened the leather bag, poked his head inside, and immediately saw Audrey asleep on the sofa, holding a black book in her hand. Really? Came with me? Audrey was startled awake and looked up at him. You've turned back to normal? Can I go out now? Edward hesitated for a moment. I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? Audrey resisted the unladylike act of puffing out her cheeks and said with pursed lips, Mr. Extraordinary One, are you joking with me again? Why don't you come up first? He took a few steps back, and after Audrey struggled out, he pointed around. The bad news is, you're no longer in Backland. The good news is, Edward placed his right hand on his chest and bowed slightly, like a gentleman. Welcome to Hogwarts, Chapter 4. Audrey of Hogwarts. Audrey stared blankly at Edward, hesitated for a moment, and whispered, Are you sure you want to keep wearing this dress? Edward was speechless, feeling like he had punched a cotton ball. I said I'd kill without blinking, but you asked me if my eyes are dry. You've missed the point, Miss Justice. Audrey looked around and asked curiously, The decor here does seem different from Backland, or rather different from the rest of Rune. So, have we left Rune? Is this the Fusak Empire or the Republic of Intis? Her question stumped Edward. This place is not any country you know. You can think of it as a completely secluded place, far removed from the world of ordinary people. Could this be the legendary land forsaken by the gods? No, not exactly. Where is that? And why did you bring me here? Audrey stared intently into Edward's eyes. Her emerald green eyes seemed to possess an indescribable light, giving Edward an urge to simply tell him everything. Edward abruptly turned his gaze away, his tone turning serious as he said, Miss Audrey, are you using extraordinary abilities on me? She blinked, looking completely innocent. I would like to, but I don't possess any extraordinary abilities. Edward quickly recalled that the audience pathway did not seem to possess extraordinary abilities in the early stages, and it was not until sequence 7 that they would suddenly gain a series of abilities such as intimidation, frenzy, and mind reading. Gong. To be precise, they do not possess any extraordinary skills that can be unleashed. However, starting from sequence 9, viewers can observe others' words and actions to discern their true thoughts and subtly influence and guide them to achieve the results they desire. So, did she start consciously guiding me from the moment she innocently asked me, "Are your eyes dry?" As expected, a sequence 9 is still an extraordinary being. Don't underestimate a shrimp, Miss Justice. Don't you think your behavior was too reckless? Aren't you afraid I'll get angry? Oh, Mang is a lineage of the Tarot Society. Okay, never mind. But that makes things difficult. One lie requires countless more to cover it up, but lying to an audience is clearly unwise. Alternatively, we could keep her locked in the leather bag, release her after 15 days, and then never see her again. Audrey then held up the black book she had been holding, one of Edward's many Chinese books. The text in this book is exactly the same as the script invented by Emperor Roselle. But Emperor Roselle's script all came from his manuscripts, while this book is in very standard printed form. She looked as if she had discovered some earth-shattering secret, her expression growing increasingly shocked. Could it be that that script wasn't actually invented by the great emperor? He also came from here. She had one more thing she didn't say. Could the mysterious, seemingly divine fool, who could also understand the writings of Emperor Roselle, be connected to this place in some way? Miss Justice, do you have to be less smart? It makes me look stupid. Mr. Extraordinary. Audrey wanted to ask something more, but Edward quickly gestured for her to stop, then paced back and forth, rubbing his temples. Wait a minute. Let me sort this out. Make it up. You can think of this place as similar to the Forsaken Land. Emperor Roselle, perhaps, possibly, probably also came from here, Edward became increasingly at a loss for words. Logically speaking, there are only 3 choices. Either kill her to prevent future troubles, erase her memory, or leave her here forever. But someone was peacefully enjoying hot pot and singing at home when you suddenly kidnapped them and brought them here, and then you killed them to keep the secret. That's just not fair. Could we use the oblivion charm to erase her memories of herself? Yes, but the downside is that once her sequence level is higher, she'll easily discover the problem with her memories. Manipulating memories is a specialty of the audience sequence. Staying in the Harry Potter world, in the short term there's no problem, but without her, this extravagant spender, will the Tarot Association still be able to advance through the sequence as quickly as in the original story? I'll be considered half a member of the mysterious world from now on. Without the fool to protect me, when the apocalypse comes, it will probably be the day I'm finished. Wait, why am I thinking about the apocalypse? What's the apocalypse again? Was that memory erased? Wait a minute. This is Harry Potter. There must be a better way. This method eliminates the need to lie, avoids the worry of her leaking secrets, and can also closely link the two of them together. A win-win situation. In just a few dozen seconds, Edward's mind went through a storm. Only after he made up his mind did he let out a long breath and look at Audrey seriously, saying, "I don't know if you can understand, but we are now in another world. A world without rune, without intus, without the church, without potions, without sequences, without everything you know. If nothing unexpected happens, the two worlds will be like two parallel lines, never able to intersect, and even a god as powerful as him may be powerless to change that. My journey to your world was an accident, and bringing you back was an even bigger accident. I'm sorry." Even after Edward finished speaking, Audrey simply stood with her hands behind her back, her brows slightly furrowed. "Are you telling me this because I can't go back anymore?" Or is there some other reason? Edward shrugged. For some reason I don't know, I travel between the two worlds every 15 days, which means I'll need to live in your world frequently from now on. So if possible, I'd like to get your help. Audrey visibly trembled, and the fingers that had been tightly intertwined behind her back loosened. It's good that I can go back. At this moment, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although she had appeared calm and collected throughout, it was mostly just a facade. It's impossible for her not to be afraid when someone suddenly barges in and kidnaps her and she's inexplicably taken to a strange place. But reason tells her that crying and being scared at this moment is pointless. She must make good use of her Sequence 9 extraordinary talents. Observe and analyze the boy in front of her as much as possible and try to gain an advantage for herself. If the other party is a good person, then gaining more of their favor is naturally not a bad thing. If the other party is a bad person, then you should try your best to delay the time that is unfavorable to you and strive for more chances to escape. It seems I'm having good luck. You believe that? I don't completely believe it. Audrey gradually regained some of her energy, and curiosity sparkled again in her emerald eyes. For example, since you're from another world, why do you seem so familiar with my world? And why are you so fluent in rune? Edward replied without hesitation. Well, I'm not quite sure either. It seems like I somehow found out as soon as I entered your world. The truth about the original novel, Lord of Mysteries, is something I can't reveal yet, as it's my only remaining hope. Audrey didn't dwell on it too much and began to look around with interest. So what's next? Two choices. One is that you stay. Edward pointed to the leather bag on the ground. Inside, I will provide you with food and water regularly. I choose the other one. Without hesitation, she raised her hand and said, I've finally come to a completely different world. How can I waste my time there? Besides, the extraordinary ability you used before is different from ours, right? Can I learn it too? Do I need to take a potion or something else? Her choice was exactly what Edward had expected, but he still looked troubled as he replied, To be honest, you're an unregistered person here. You know what an unregistered person is, right? I don't have your prestigious status. Having a completely unknown person suddenly appearing would be troublesome for me, so I'd prefer you to choose the first option. Audrey puffed out her cheeks, no longer caring about being a lady or not. Edward was immediately charmed by her appearance. But I respect your choice. However, you must promise that you will never reveal any information about the other world. For this, I need to sign a contract with you in front of a respectable elder in a moment. Is that all right? That makes perfect sense. That's good. He picked up the leather pouch from the ground, took out his wand, and said, As for my extraordinary ability being called magic, it doesn't require potions, and there's no risk of it going out of control. You can master it through learning. Completely cleaned up, a gentle breeze swept by, instantly dispelling the dust that had settled on Audrey's dress from going in and out of her pockets. Clear water like a spring. A stream of clear water appeared out of nowhere and landed right on Audrey's hands. Restored to its original condition, the final spell was cast by Edward on his torn dress. The dress seemed to reverse time and quickly returned to normal. It's very useful whether you're at home, traveling, or fighting the enemy. No sooner had he finished speaking than his skirt ripped again. Edward shrugged and said, Looks like I really do need to change. Pfft. Audrey couldn't help but laugh. It truly deserves to be called the most dazzling jewel in Backland. Chapter 5. Dumbledore. While Edward was hitting the wall opposite the tapestry with the giant club, a door suddenly appeared. Edward pushed the door open and walked out, but the door disappeared again as soon as he turned around. Edward stomped his foot hard on the stone floor, finally feeling the real sense of returning to the world of Harry Potter. Sigh. In the end, we still have to find old Deng. The headmaster's office at Hogwarts is also on the 8th floor of the castle. Dumbledore once mistakenly entered the room of requirement in the middle of the night when he needed to urinate, and he took care of his personal needs in a daze. Edward had just turned the corner when he saw a man limping towards him. He was wearing a tattered leather jacket, his hair was disheveled, and his face was gloomy. "Edward, I've finally found you, dear Mr. Filch. It's summer vacation and daytime now, so I don't think I've violated any school rules, have I? I don't care if you're violating the ban or not. Can you please keep your cat away from mine?" He shouted angrily at Mrs. Loris, who was following closely behind him. Edward shrugged. This is probably normal interaction between cats. Besides, although Lilith is mischievous, she rarely leaves the Hufflepuff lounge. I think you should keep a closer eye on Lady Loris. I remember last time she tried to steal Lilith's dried fish, he said, growing increasingly angry. You better wish I don't catch your cat doing anything bad, or I'll hang it at the castle gate. Edward remained unmoved and walked straight past Filch. Excuse me, could you please let me pass? I have something very important to discuss with Professor Dumbledore. I'll definitely catch it doing something bad. Good luck, Mr. Filch. Edward stopped in front of the hideous, enormous stone monster in front of the headmaster's office, still unsure how to tell Dumbledore. After all, Audrey came from another world. What kind of story should he come up with? A pile of cockroaches. The stone monster did not react. Bertie Bott's, every flavor beans. Sour lollipops. The monster finally came to life and jumped to the side. The wall behind it split in two, and behind the wall was a spiral staircase that was slowly moving upwards. Edward stepped onto the spiral staircase and soon arrived at a gleaming oak door with a brass knocker in the shape of a griffin. Before he could knock, the door opened silently. I don't think you were wise in choosing the defense against the dark arts teacher, sir. A sarcastic voice came from the office. Like last year, Professor Pat, oh my God, he actually had the audacity to take his students to the Forbidden Forest for a hands-on practice on how to deal with dark creatures, and what happened. He's long since become the dung of those spiders, just enough to irrigate his beloved Forbidden Forest. That was just an accident, Severus. Risking his life to teach the children defense against dark magic through real combat, choosing to stay behind to buy them time when danger struck. Doesn't that prove he was a qualified teacher? We should respect his sacrifice, not ridicule him. So what did those kids learn? No. They learned nothing but stupidity. At least they learned to face crises and confront death. Give the children a little more time, Severus. Oh, I think I have guests. Edward walked into the headmaster's office and immediately saw all sorts of strange and unusual little things. On the wall hung portraits of headmasters from different periods, all listening with great interest to Dumbledore and Snape's argument. They seemed quite used to it after all. Similar conversations happened almost every year, and always ended with Snape leaving disappointed. Snape's brows furrowed as soon as he saw Edward, and he instinctively pulled his large black robe tighter around himself. Edward, what brings you here again? I told you, I'm running low on potion ingredients. Edward scratched his head. Professor Snape, this is the headmaster's office. Is it possible I'm here to see Professor Dumbledore? Dumbledore's smile made even his blue eyes, hidden beneath his crescent-shaped eyes, crinkle. Snape snorted coldly, reverting to his arrogant and aloof demeanor, looking down at Edward. How's the Felix Felicis brewing going? Edward, obedient and sensible, said, We're still a little short of a professor. I hope you won't waste my precious materials. Snape tossed his robes and turned to leave, but turned back at the door and said, I hope you will seriously consider my opinion and not let Hogwarts be ruined by those defense against the dark arts teachers you found. Dumbledore, smiled slightly. I am the headmaster of Hogwarts, and I will be responsible for this place. You'll regret this. Snape left the office like a giant bat. Have a seat, Edward. Dumbledore warmly invited Edward to sit down, then with a flick of his wand, conjured a box of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. Would you like some? Edward politely declined. Ever since I ate one that tasted like cow dung, I've sworn never to touch it again. Oh, it tastes like cow dung. To be honest, I've never tasted it before. The white-haired old man with a long white beard was like a playful old man, and a hint of anticipation appeared on his face. It shouldn't be any worse than the smell of boogers, right? Do we really have to talk about shit here, Professor? He smiled and waved his hand. Sorry, I can never control my curiosity about new things. Dumbledore changed the subject. Pomona told me that you spent almost all your holidays at Hogwarts over the past 3 years. Of course, I'm not saying you can't stay, but young people should get out more and make more friends, shouldn't they? As far as I know, you're the only student staying at school this summer. At this point, Dumbledore patted his forehead. Oh, sorry. Old people always like to talk to themselves. Is there something you need from me today? After much hesitation, Edward finally spoke. I would like to apply for early access to apparition training. Dumbledore paused slightly, adjusting his glasses. You should know how dangerous it is to learn apparition, shouldn't you? That's right, but I believe that with the guidance of a professional teacher, it shouldn't be too difficult for me. Well, since you've thought it through, then there's no problem. When school starts, you can sign up for the apparition course with the 6th graders. I know my request is a bit unreasonable, but I hope to learn it within 2 weeks. Is that okay? Apparition is definitely a life-saving skill for both home and travel. He has to go to the mysterious world in 15 days, so he must master it as soon as possible. Dumbledore looked at him in surprise. Then I'll have to teach you myself, but we'll have to wait 2 more days. You know, I'm still trying to find a defense against the dark arts teacher for you next semester. So far, the only one who has signed up is... Oh, Mr. Quirinus Quirrell. Quirrell, Edward suddenly realized. So, our savior, Mr. Harry Potter, will be enrolling next semester? Dumbledore picked up a flavor bean and popped it into his mouth. So, is there anything else you want to ask me? Oh, lucky you, toffee flavor. I don't know if Professor Flitwick has mentioned it, but I haven't made any progress in learning the Patronus charm. I'm sure that both the incantation and the movements are very standard, and I'm thinking about the happiest things, but I don't even get a single reaction. Dumbledore paused noticeably. I have indeed heard of it, but I don't have any good solutions at the moment. That's how magic often is. Some people can easily master the unforgivable curse, yet they can't even use the most basic transfiguration charm properly. Others can master a certain spell to its fullest extent, but they can barely get started with other spells. A glint of wisdom flashed in his deep eyes. However, today is not a good time to discuss these things. I can tell that your real purpose in coming to me is not what you just mentioned. Edward was startled. His first thought was that Dumbledore had used legilimency on him. I understand now. I understand why you always keep a certain distance from me. The old man looked helpless. I am indeed a master of mind control, but I don't have the habit of constantly spying on other people's thoughts. Self-control has always been a quality I'm rarely satisfied with. Everyone has secrets, and there's nothing to apologize for. But if you need to, you're welcome to come and confide in me anytime. Dumbledore winked mischievously. Keeping secrets is another quality I'm proud of. Edward hesitated before speaking. Yes, that's right. I have a friend who comes from an ancient and remote country, a country that rarely has contact with the outside world. She wants to go to Hogwarts to study magic. Generally, every student admitted to Hogwarts has their name written on the admission book by the pen of acceptance at birth, and then receives an admission notice at the age of 11. Occasionally, some transfer students come in mid-term, and even if they are not well known, they certainly cannot be illegal immigrants from another world like Audrey. Dumbledore's face remained kind and gentle. And then, looking at the old man who had taken him out of the orphanage and had always been very kind to him, Edward couldn't bring himself to say anything more. Everyone says Dumbledore is like an old bee, that he's always plotting something, that he's controlling everything. But looking at the original books, everything he did was just to protect Harry and the students of Hogwarts. This is a kind, righteous, and admirable old man. After a long pause, Edward let out a long sigh and made up his mind. Professor, what I'm about to say might sound bizarre, but it's my true experience. You suddenly disappeared from Hogwarts for more than 20 minutes, Dumbledore suddenly said. That wasn't apparition, nor was it a portkey. It was as if you had been completely erased from this world. You know, normally I certainly couldn't keep track of hundreds of students at school, but this summer, you were the only one left on campus. He paused, took off his glasses, and said seriously, If you said that you went to another world during the time you disappeared, I would probably shout, "Oh, Merlin's mustache," and then choose to believe you. Edward was stunned. "Oh, Merlin's beard." He did indeed shout, then nodded thoughtfully. "So your friend is, what's that muggle word for now? Alien?" "That's about it." Dumbledore laughed. "What can I say when even aliens want to join my Hogwarts as headmaster? Welcome. You're welcome any time." Chapter 6. My name is Edward. To be honest, Edward had come up with all sorts of reasons and excuses on his way here, but none of them had any chance of persuading the White Wizard. That's why he chose to give up so quickly and planned to confess. But Dumbledore actually guessed the gist of it before he even said it. Is this the weight of the greatest White Wizard? So, has your friend arrived? Edward opened the leather bag and placed it on the ground, calling out in Rune, "Audrey, come up." Dumbledore rose and glanced into his pocket, saying seriously, "It's not gentlemanly to leave a lady here." Audrey, slightly out of breath, emerged from the leather bag and looked around curiously. She was quickly drawn to the lifelike portraits of the headmaster on the wall, and for a moment she couldn't tell whether they were paintings or windows. Dumbledore strode forward, very gentlemanly, took her hand and helped her up. "May I ask this lady's name?" Audrey blinked her big eyes and looked to Edward for help. She couldn't understand what Dumbledore was saying, but she could tell that he seemed kind, like a well-read old scholar, but the sharpness hidden in his eyes suggested that he was not as simple as he appeared. "Sorry, she doesn't speak English." Edward, naturally acting as a human translator, introduced them. "This is, well, Professor Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of this magic school. He's asking for your name. This is Audrey Hall." Dumbledore took Audrey's hand and gave it a light kiss. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Hall." "Hello, Professor Dumbledore." Edward thought for a moment and asked, "Professor, can she learn magic? I mean, I'm not sure if she's a muggle. After all, she's already 17. "Don't worry," Dumbledore chuckled. "Her ancestors must have been very powerful wizards. In some ways, she is purer than those pure-blood families. She just lacks the opportunity to learn magic." "Purer than pure-blood? Is it because of the special nature of this mysterious world? Or because the potion changed her constitution? Or because the Hall family did indeed have powerful, extraordinary individuals among their ancestors?" "Miss Hall, on behalf of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, I welcome you to our school." Without any beating around the bush, Dumbledore extended an invitation directly. Although Audrey couldn't understand, she still politely bowed, clutching the hem of her skirt. The headmasters on the wall applauded in welcome, with Phineas Black being particularly excited. He shouted, "Such a pure-blooded wizard must join our Slytherin. I will have Minerva get the admission letter and related procedures done as soon as possible." So this matter was resolved so easily? Was Dumbledore overconfident in his abilities? Or did he have a thick skin? Or was there some other reason? Edward hesitated for a long time before asking, "Professor, don't you want to ask me anything about Audrey and where I went after I disappeared?" Dumbledore smiled slightly. "No rush. We still have time." Then, as if remembering something, he added, "Oh, by the way, you'll be going to that place again, won't you?" 2 weeks later. "Well understood." He winked at Edward. "If you're going to tell me anything later, I'm always ready to listen. Now, I'll do my part as your host." "Wait, Professor. I want to make an unbreakable vow with Audrey. Can you be our witness?" Dumbledore paused for a moment, then nodded. "Of course." Edward extended his right hand to Audrey. "Take my hand with your right hand." Audrey hesitated for a few seconds before taking his right hand. "I'm sorry, but I'll have to trouble you a little longer and kneel down face to face with me." Well, she had no choice but to do as she was told. The two knelt face to face before Dumbledore, their right hands clasped tightly. Dumbledore touched their clasped hands with his wand, and his eyes suddenly flickered with a vague vision of himself doing the same thing with a boy in the most innocent and carefree years of his life. Unfortunately, the two eventually parted ways. Edward then spoke in Rune with a serious expression. "Audrey, you won't reveal my secret to any of you, will you?" Audrey tensed up and said, "Yes, I will never tell." A thin, red flame shot out from Dumbledore's wand and wrapped tightly around their hands. Although the intense heat of the flames did not cause any real harm, they did make them feel the pain of being burned. Edward continued in Rune, "And you would never tell anyone about the existence of another world without my permission, would you?" Audrey gritted her teeth and nodded. "Yes." A second flame coiled around their hands. Edward took a deep breath and said his third question. "Can I trust you forever?" She nodded emphatically. "Okay." The wand unleashed a third burst of flame. Edward looked at her and said, "All right, it's your turn. An unbreakable vow is mutual. It's your turn to make your vow request." Audrey hesitated for a few seconds. "Are you sure you won't hurt me? And that you'll take me back, right?" Yes, that's enough." The flames gradually dissipated, as if they had seeped into their skin, and thus the unbreakable vow was signed. Dumbledore put away his wand, a nostalgic smile on his face. "I hope this vow will be a testament to your relationship from now on, and not a shackle." "I believe it's the former." Edward did not doubt Audrey's kindness. Signing the oath was merely an extra layer of insurance. He turned to Audrey and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Audrey. You were forced to come here because of my involvement, but I forced you to endure the scorching pain and sign the contract." She smiled sweetly and said, "Actually, it makes me feel more at ease that you did this, doesn't it?" Edward was taken aback, but then he understood what she meant. Dumbledore coughed and teased. "Ahem, are you two planning to keep kneeling like this?" "As far as I know, in the mysterious East, a man and a woman kneeling face to face has a different meaning." Edward quickly helped Audrey up and loosened his grip on her small hand. At that moment, a fiery red light suddenly appeared in the office, trailing a long trail of flame as it circled in midair before finally stopping on Dumbledore's shoulder. It was Fawkes the Phoenix. "Hello, Fawkes." Edward greeted it. Fawkes immediately turned its head away. It didn't like this bad student who was always eyeing its feathers. Dumbledore listened attentively to what Fawkes whispered in his ear, then said apologetically, "I'm sorry, but there's something very important that I need to attend to immediately." "Edward, Miss Hall is in your care. I'll have Minerva arrange accommodations for her. Oh, and you'd better teach Miss Audrey English as soon as possible." "Okay, Professor. Oh, don't forget to take these Bertie Bott's every flavor beans with you." Dumbledore waved his hand, about to follow Fawkes in his phantom formation, when Edward couldn't help but ask, "Professor, don't you feel anything for her?" He winked and smiled. "Didn't I just say? Everyone has some secrets, right?" With a loud bang, Dumbledore and Fawkes vanished. "Wow, is this the magic you were talking about? Instant teleportation?" Audrey was overjoyed and had already begun to imagine what it would be like to master this extraordinary ability. Well, it's a rather advanced kind of magic. At least I haven't mastered it yet. Edward shrugged. All right, I'll take you to get something to eat first. Then we'll go find Professor McGonagall to help you arrange accommodations. The Hogwarts kitchen is located directly below the Hogwarts Great Hall, next to the Hufflepuff Common Room. People often say that Hufflepuff students are all foodies, and that's pretty much true. With so few recreational activities at school, delicious food has become one of the very few sources of happiness. Audrey was like a curious child the whole way, but she remained very restrained until she came to the bizarrely designed and complicated staircase that looked like it had ADHD. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, "Is this used to defend against foreign invasion? I think it's just a special kind of art." God knows if the person who invented this staircase had a grudge against the students of Hogwarts. Because it was summer vacation, the kitchen was much quieter than usual. Most of the house elves were listless, while a few fought over the few chores they could get their hands on. "Dear Mr. Edward, what can I do for you?" A sharp-eyed little sprite immediately appeared in phantom form, its large, bulging eyes filled with longing. Prepare 2 dinners for me." "Just 2 servings?" It was clearly disappointed. "Then 2 more servings? It's my pleasure to serve you, sir." The little sprite teleported away again, then cheerfully began casting magic to cook. "Please deliver this to the common room in Hufflepuff when you're done." Seeing that all the elves who hadn't gotten a chance to do anything were looking over, Edward quickly told Audrey to slip away. He would never forget how he had eaten enough food for 4 people under the expectant gaze of a dozen pairs of big eyes, leaving him so full that he felt nauseous for days afterward. "What were those little guys?" Audrey asked. "Are they extraordinary creatures here?" "I guess so. They are our little elves." She was stunned, gesturing unconsciously with her hands. "But shouldn't elves be a very noble and elegant race?" "Why are they?" She suddenly covered her mouth. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that the elves here are bad. It's just, Edward laughed and said, "It's nothing, just a difference between different worlds." The 2 stopped in front of a pile of large wooden barrels. Unlike other houses, entering the Hufflepuff Common Room doesn't require a password or riddle, but rather striking the bottom of the second barrel in the second row of the large wooden barrels in the rhythm of Helga Hufflepuff. If the person striking the wrong rhythm, the wrong barrel, or the wrong number of times, they will be doused with aged vinegar that has been fermenting for who knows how many years. A delightful surprise for the people of Shang-Chi. Next, they enjoyed a sumptuous dinner in Hufflepuff's common room. Although they had only requested 4 portions, enough was delivered for 10 people. Audrey fully demonstrated the poise and etiquette of a noble lady of Lowen when dining, strictly adhering to her family education in everything from the way she held the knife and fork, the width of her mouth opening, and the frequency of her chewing. However, Edward couldn't appreciate it at all. He could only worry for her. "Gal?" A light and petite figure came running from the direction of the bedroom. It silently jumped onto the table, glanced curiously at Audrey, then turned to Edward and meowed, as if asking a question. This is a small black cat. Although she is smaller than a typical cat, she is actually 2 years old. She has the bloodline of a black-footed cat, so she is quite petite. Her 2 blue pupils are like bright and dazzling sapphires, and at a glance, it seems as if you can see the deep starry sky hidden within them. Black-footed cats are natural hunters, active at night and incredibly agile, often catching prey much larger than themselves. Edward had wanted to own one before he transmigrated, but unfortunately, he couldn't find one in China. "This is my cat, Lilith." Edward beckoned, and Lilith immediately snuggled up to him, raising her tail high and rubbing against him. Oh, every student who enters Hogwarts can bring a pet, but there are usually only 3 choices: an owl, a toad, or a cat. Audrey slowly swallowed her food and asked in confusion, "I can understand owls and cats, but why are there toads? Are toads a different kind of creature here?" "No, that's not it. Keeping toads as pets is a very old tradition. In fact, most students nowadays choose owls which can help you deliver mail anywhere. What are you planning to keep? Well, I have Susie. That's enough. Oh, Susie is a golden retriever. Edward nodded. I know. She's the one who tore my trouser leg, and she already knew I was a fake before I came back to this world. Ugh, Susie told me. Didn't she take a potion too? He grabbed Lilith's forelimbs and lifted her up. Lilith, how about I get you a potion to take too? Lily didn't hold back at all, kicking him with her hind legs and landing nimbly on the table. Then she quickly flicked her tail and let out several meows. All you ever do is eat. Edward flicked her nose lightly, took out a small dried fish, and she skillfully snuggled into Edward's arms, munching away. Audrey then put down her knife and fork. I'm full. Thank you for the meal. All right, let's go find Professor McGonagall to help you arrange accommodations. I forgot to introduce you. Hogwarts has 4 houses. Professor McGonagall is the head of Gryffindor. I'm Hufflepuff, and the other 2 are Ravenclaw and Slytherin. You'll probably be meeting them soon. She hesitated for a moment and said, You've introduced me to all sorts of things all day, but you haven't mentioned yourself at all, like your name. Edward was taken aback and quickly apologized. I'm sorry, you might not believe it, but I've actually had this illusion that we've known each other for a long time. He did indeed feel that he had known this Miss Justice for a long time. He extended his hand and introduced himself briefly. My name is Edward, an orphan. I only have a first name and no surname. He certainly had a surname, but it had long since vanished with the passage of time. Chapter 7, Diagon Alley. After dinner, Edward took Audrey to Professor McGonagall to arrange accommodations. Professor McGonagall's office is a small study on the 2nd floor of Hogwarts Castle, with a view of the Quidditch pitch. This seemingly strict and old-fashioned lady was once a typical Gryffindor lion cub who loved adventure and Quidditch. Although it was summer vacation, the fireplace in the office was still burning, but the temperature inside was just right. That's the magic of it. As soon as Audrey entered the office, she saw a tabby cat grooming itself contentedly. The human and the cat exchanged a glance, and the tabby cat rapidly grew larger, transforming into Professor McGonagall. An overly mature cat girl. Oh, this must be Miss Audrey Hall, the transfer student Professor Dumbledore mentioned. Yes. Good evening, Professor McGonagall. Edward continued to act as the translator. Audrey suppressed her curiosity about why people could turn into cats and gracefully curtsied, clutching the hem of her skirt. Come with me. Professor McGonagall was as efficient as ever, leading the 2 quickly toward the Gryffindor dormitories. She introduced Hogwarts, then Gryffindor, and finally arranged the dormitories all in one go. When they left the Gryffindor common room, only Edward and Professor McGonagall remained. Edward, spend these next few days teaching Miss Hall some English, and then take her to Diagon Alley to get all the things she needs for school. This is something I should be doing, but you know I need to go to the Muggle world to make sure those future wizards can start school on time next semester. Okay, Professor. Oh, by the way, the school will provide Miss Hall with a scholarship, so I'll just give it to you directly. After handing Edward a bag of galleons, Professor McGonagall hurriedly left. Edward looked at the empty castle and sighed. He walked to the window and looked at the starry sky, lost in thought for a moment. Before today, all I needed to do was learn magic, collect Horcruxes in advance, intervene at crucial moments to salvage some regrets, and then concentrate on studying the Philosopher's Stone to achieve at least the immortality of Nicholas Flamel. However, the emergence of the mysterious world forced me to make changes. Susie, who had just entered Sequence 9, already had such a strong resistance to magic. Relying solely on magic would definitely be far from enough in the mysterious world. Therefore, I must take the potion. But which approach should we choose? On the other side, Audrey, having finished washing up, lay on the soft bed, her heart also filled with unease. Before today, the little princess of the Hall family thought she had already experienced enough. The mysterious Tarot Club, the powerful Mr. Fool, Susie who took the magic potion, and all sorts of knowledge and rumors about the mysterious world, until another equally magical world suddenly appeared before her. After experiencing fear, apprehension, worry, doubt, and curiosity, she was now filled with nothing but anticipation, looking forward to what surprises this world would bring her. Audrey let out a soft breath and closed her eyes. Good night, Hogwarts. Good night, Mom and Dad. Good night, Audrey. Suddenly, she opened her eyes. Oh no. What about the weekly tarot reading? For the next 3 days, Edward taught Audrey English from scratch, starting with the most basic alphabet. Edward's English was something he had with him when he transmigrated, and his method of learning English came from the English classes he took in his previous life. You should know that most students in China spend more than 10 years, and even if they pass the CET4 and CET6 exams, they still end up with only mute English. So at first he worried that he might teach Audrey to be like that too, but he soon realized he was overthinking it. People in the mysterious world seem to have an extraordinary talent for learning languages and occult knowledge. In the world of mystery, you'd be embarrassed to go out if you didn't speak Giants, Hermes, or Elvish. Even the usually averse to studying, Danitz, is fluent in quite a few mystical languages. Edward then took the opportunity to have Audrey teach him Hermes. He had already confirmed that he did not know any other cryptic languages besides Rune. After 3 days of learning, Audrey was already able to hold simple daily conversations, but Edward's learning was not going well. Even Lilith, who had been by his side the whole time, sometimes looked at him with disdain. Marie? He must not have taken any magic potions. He comforted himself. Yes, yes, yes. Audrey comforted him. And so, the day to go shopping at Diagon Alley soon arrived. Edward originally wanted to use the Flu network in Professor McGonagall's office to get directly to the fireplace in the leaky cauldron, but Professor McGonagall had already left early, so he went to find Dumbledore instead. The moment Fawkes dropped the two off at the entrance to Diagon Alley, he vanished with a pop, not even giving Edward a chance to thank him. Edward was somewhat wronged. His initial request for the feather from Fawkes was simply to make more of Voldemort's twin wands. By the time of the final battle, with everyone wielding one, they would truly teach Voldemort a lesson in cruelty. Before them stretched a stone-paved street lined with shops on both sides, where wizards dressed in various styles hurried through the alleyways. In the past few days at Hogwarts, she had only met Edward, Professor McGonagall, and a few other people. Suddenly seeing so many people, especially since many of them were looking at her with amazement, made her feel a little uncomfortable. Edward pulled out a letter and handed it to her. This is your acceptance letter, which Professor McGonagall asked me to give you. It's a bit late, but it's still part of the proper procedure and ceremony. He shrugged. Audrey opened the letter, which contained beautifully handwritten words in a quill pen. Dear Miss Audrey Hall, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The term begins on September 1st. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. The following is a list. 2. Equipment. T-port of Mossy A magic wand. 2. A school cap. 3. A winter cloak. The 3. Other items. WF. 1. A quill pen. 2. Ink and parchment. Although Audrey could communicate in simple English, she still had some difficulty understanding the notice, so Edward simply read it aloud to her in Rune. Next, we need to purchase everything we need according to the list in this notice. Let's buy you a wizard's uniform first. You can't keep wearing this dress. Edward led her toward the Madame Malkin's robe shop. The two entered the shop, and the short, plump Mrs. Malkin greeted them immediately, her face beaming with a flamboyant smile and her tone exaggerated. Oh, I swear, you are absolutely the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Are you going to Hogwarts? But why have I never seen you before? A girl like you is unforgettable once you've seen her. I just transferred to Hogwarts. This is my first time here. Thank you for your compliment, she replied in fairly fluent English, adding a thank you at the end. Madame Malkin waved her wand, and several rulers flew automatically to Audrey's side. As Madame Malkin took notes, she said, "Oh, what perfect proportions. After the dress is finished, may I leave your photo in the shop?" Audrey looked curiously at the self-operating rulers and nodded slightly. "It works." The entire process of making the clothes took much longer than Edward's. Mrs. Malkin meticulously crafted the garment like a fine work of art, striving for perfection in every stitch and every thread. Several customers came in during this time, but Mrs. Malkin didn't have time to serve them, so she eventually closed the shop. "Okay, darling." Nearly 2 hours later, Mrs. Malkin took a half-step back, looking at Audrey's new uniform with satisfaction. "I swear, this is definitely the best work I've ever done." Edward, who had been waiting for so long he was about to fall asleep, quickly prepared to take out his money and leave upon hearing this. How could you tarnish such a fine piece of work with money? Free. From now on, every single one of her uniforms will be free. Mrs. Malkin exclaimed angrily. Edward and Audrey exchanged a glance. Being good-looking really does have its privileges. "Thank you." She smiled too, and compared to the compliments she often heard in Backland, she could see that Mrs. Malkin's was more genuine. The two then sped up their pace. To avoid a similar situation from happening again, Edward simply bought her a mask to wear. The cauldron, books, quill, ink, and parchment were all gone until only the wand remained. Ollivander's wand shop was small and shabby, with the gold lettering on the door peeling off. It read, "Ollivander, making fine wands since 382 BC. In the dusty shop window, a magic wand sits forlornly on a faded purple cushion. "Oh, isn't this Mr. Edward? I remember you. Black pear wood, phoenix feather core, 10 3/4 inches long, tough, strong, suitable for unleashing powerful magic. I believe you will definitely be a qualified Oro in the future." Ollivander was an old man with silver eyes and pale skin. Audrey quickly judged him by observing the audience's demeanor. The old man was clearly very confident in his professional abilities, and his knowledge of the customers and what they bought was not a display of his memory, but rather a way to enhance his influence. As for this beautiful girl, she probably didn't buy her wand from me. He looked at Audrey. "You have a good memory, Mr. Ollivander. I'm here with this transfer student to buy a wand." Edward complimented his memory as usual. "Oh, welcome. Which arm do you use to wield your wand, madam?" Ollivander replied cheerfully, pulling a long measuring tape with silver markings from his pocket. Audrey was taken aback. She hadn't really thought about that. "I think it should be my right hand." "Excellent." Ollivander skillfully measured the dimensions of Audrey's various parts. A good wand, besides needing to fit your characteristics and allow you to cast various spells, also needs to be in proportion to your body parts. After all, in battle, even if you are a second late in drawing your wand, you may have already been hit by the enemy. He turned and went to the cabinet piled with all kinds of wands to rummage through them. "Well then, let me see which wand suits you best." Chapter 8. Fuck It. Ollivander moved skillfully between the shelves, carrying more and more long boxes in his arms. A few minutes later, he placed 7 or 8 long boxes containing wands on the table, took one out and handed it to Audrey. "I think a lady as beautiful as you would be perfectly suited to this unicorn hair core walnut wand, 7 3/4 inches long, which fits your proportions perfectly." Edward had already explained to her the importance of wands to wizards, so she couldn't help but feel excited when she held the wand in her own hands. However, before she could even wave her wand, Ollivander snatched it back. "Oh no, you and the unicorn core seem completely incompatible. I can't sense any magical fluctuations." Edward sighed, rubbing his forehead. Here we go again. This old man, who had been making wands for many years, was well versed in sales tactics. Every young wizard who came to buy a wand would be given the illusion that they were unique and the protagonist. So they readily paid and left, adding a thank you as they went. He took out another wand. "Then try this one. Dragon heartstring, holly wood, very flexible." Audrey took the wand and waved it gently, as if it were her own arm. A pleasant breeze also blew through the wand shop. Wow, that suits you perfectly. Was it only the second one that fit? Was it because Audrey was older, so they didn't need to fool her anymore? However, Ollivander did not give up and took out another one. Then let's try this one. Ebony, dragon heartstring, 8 inches long. Audrey waved as usual, and a gentle breeze still blew by. Wonderful, 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 Ollivander exclaimed repeatedly. Then how about this one? Acacia wood, dragon heartstring, 8 1/4 inches. The effect is almost the same as the previous two. Audrey then tried 7 or 8 more strings, all with dragon heartstrings, and each one seemed to fit perfectly. Ollivander was increasingly astonished. It's incredible. I've never seen anyone get along so well with so many different wands, but I always felt that none of them were the most suitable for you. Edward asked softly. Audrey, what did you feel when you waved those wands just now? She thought for a moment and said, It's amazing. I feel like it's an amplifier, amplifying my 5 senses and spirituality. What else? Audrey gripped her wand tightly, sensing the power within. It seems my observation skills have improved a lot. For example, I can see the guilt hidden in your eyes. Edward instinctively turned his head away from her gaze, then pretended to be calm and said, what do I have to be guilty of? She didn't say anything more, just looked at Edward with a smile. The audience is definitely the most annoying thing. Edward wasn't genuinely insecure. He was just hesitant about whether to take Audrey to see the modern city outside the magical world. Compared to Hogwarts Castle, which bears some resemblance to Lowen, a modern metropolis would certainly have a greater impact on her. Ollivander crawled out from the corner, holding a box covered in a thick layer of dust. Finally found it. This is the wand I made out of curiosity when I was young. He opened the box, inside which was a magic wand that was crystal clear and looked like white jade, more like a work of art, made of dragon bone and dragon heartstrings, 9 inches long. I originally thought that a wizard who used it could unleash magic as powerful as a fire dragon, but unfortunately, no one has ever been able to gain its approval. Give it a try, madam. The moment I held it, I felt a cool sensation. It felt much better than a regular wooden wand. If my previous wands were like my own limbs, this one felt like it had become one with me. Audrey gently waved her wand, and a violent gust of wind swept in. But the things inside the room were not blown to pieces as expected, as if the wind did not exist in reality. Fantastic, fantastic. This wand was made just for you. The old man danced with joy, as if he had done something extraordinary. The next second, his tone changed, and he held out his hand to Edward. Thank you for your kind offer. 98 galleons. Edward was stunned and couldn't help but exclaim, 98 galleons? Aren't freshmen's first wands usually only a few galleons? Ollivander shrugged. That's ordinary material. This wand is made from a bone from the dragon's forehead that connects to its brain. Edward gritted his teeth. Ooning businessman. Audrey, who was standing next to him, gently nudged him. When we get back, I'll pay you back double. I almost forgot. This guy is a real tycoon. He's got plenty of money. Just as Edward handed a bag of galleons to Ollivander, the ground suddenly trembled slightly, followed by a deafening roar. The wizards on the street all looked in the direction of the sound, and several pointed to the sky and shouted in terror. A fire dragon! A fire dragon! The fire dragon from Gringotts has escaped. In the distance, Gringotts stands in ruins, and a giant fire dragon stands on the roof, roaring to the sky. What a gift, damn it! In the original story, wasn't the dragon's escape from Gringotts in the 6th or 7th book? What's going on? Edward was dumbfounded. Right. In the first movie, Quirrell was supposed to steal the Philosopher's Stone from Gringotts at Voldemort's behest, but did he cause such a commotion? Is that a dragon from your world? Audrey exclaimed in astonishment. Most extraordinary creatures in the mysterious world live in remote and uninhabited places, rarely seen by ordinary people. Even extraordinary beings have only seen a small part of extraordinary creatures when concocting potions, such as their eyeballs, fingernails, or brains. Ollivander clicked his tongue in admiration. I knew this day would come, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. Those damned, greedy goblins actually dared to imprison a ferocious fire dragon to help them guard their treasure vault. That's a trampling of freedom, an insult to living beings. TS, they might as well kill it and make me a wand. Edward gave him a speechless look. You're not much better. The fire dragon flapped its wings and took off shakily, crashing into more than a dozen rooftops along the way before slowly regaining its sense of flight and taking off into the air. The fire dragon circled above Diagon Alley, emitting a low roar, and never left. Isn't anyone going to do anything about it? Who would want to get involved? The goblins treat that dragon as their private property. If they risk getting hurt by it, they might end up being blackmailed. Oh, the Aurors from the Ministry of Magic have finally arrived. Ollivander, like an old man who had just finished watching the show, slowly returned to the shop. Several wizards dressed as Aurors began to attack the fire dragon. It swallowed dozens of spells in succession, and finally, unable to bear the pain any longer, it roared and spewed out mouthfuls of flames before soaring into the sky and quickly disappearing into the horizon. The Aurors also mounted their brooms and gave chase. The grand drama has now come to an end. The wizards who had been there were all talking amongst themselves, most of them gloating, hoping that the goblins would suffer even more misfortune. Edward, Audrey suddenly called out softly. What's wrong? I have a feeling that the dragon is looking for me. Her tone was uncertain. But that doesn't make sense, does it? She looked down at the crystal-clear magic wand in her hand. Could it be because of this? After a brief moment of surprise, Edward considered a possibility. It might be related to the potion Audrey had taken. Audiences were gradually showing signs of becoming dragon-like. Of course, these are all baseless guesses. He smiled and said, Don't think about it. Maybe it's just your imagination. All right. The appointment with Fox is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We can spend the remaining hour wandering around and finding something to eat. Turning around, Edward saw a tall man with a tiny little boy pushing a large cart of things as they approached. It was Hagrid and Harry Potter. Edward immediately cast a disillusionment spell on himself, concealing his presence. Hagrid scratched his head in confusion. Am I seeing things? What's wrong, Hagrid? I thought I saw a friend, your future senior, who, like me, is a huge fan of magical creatures. But Hagrid hesitated for a moment. His way of appreciating them is different from mine. I don't quite understand. He prefers the taste of magical creatures. After Hagrid and his companion had walked away, Edward dispelled the illusion spell. That big guy was a friend of mine, a very warm and simple person. But we haven't finished our business yet, so I won't say hello to him. Audrey could naturally see through his insincerity. Edward didn't actually want to have too much contact with Harry Potter. He didn't want to ruin the plot too early and lose control of the future. He wanted to wait until he was stronger so he could make some plans against Voldemort in advance. This is what it means to strategize and plan within a command tent. For time travelers, familiarity with the plot is always one of the most important cheat codes. Have you heard? Just then, a passing wizard said to his companion, The fire dragon was released because someone broke into Gringotts. Who is it to have such audacity? You'd never guess, but we just met at the Leaky Cauldron. Quirinus Quirrell, the guy with the bandage on his head. He looks like he'll be Hogwarts' defense against the dark arts teacher next semester. Garp. Sharp? What's so impressive about that? When the fire dragon escaped, it stepped right on him, crushing him to pieces. His brains were splattered all over the ground. Ugh, that was awful. Hogwarts' defense against the dark arts teacher is indeed cursed. Shh, don't mention that person. The two walked away talking, but Edward was stunned. Quirrell is dead? The Quirrell who was possessed by Voldemort in the first movie is just dead? What about Voldemort? Is he dead too? Or is he hiding in someone else's body? What about the plot of the first movie? Without Quirrell, will it be the same as the original story? That's impossible. Holy crap! Screw the plot, screw the future, screw the schemes.